step one is discovery. We want to know what the pain is of the organization.
What IFS is doing is helping bring that mining 4.0 and mining 5.0 to reality.
Welcome to Mining Now. I'm your host, Jared Downey, and we have a first-time feature on the show, IFS, and we have their Managing Director of Australia and New Zealand, Warren Zietsman, and Vijay Jaswal, the CTO of APJ and MEA. Did I have that right?
That's correct.
Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Great to have IFS on. First time on the show. I know it's been a busy show, so thanks for getting up early and doing this with us. Let's start with just the intro to IFS. Who wants to kick that off? Just sort of outline who the company is.
Why don't I kick that off?
Sure.
So IFS, enterprise software company. We've been around since 1983. Started life in the world of asset maintenance. We started off in Sweden, building a maintenance program for a nuclear power plant. So a long, deep-rooted heritage in industrial assets. And expanded out there into areas of projects, into areas of service. And today we're around 7,000 employees across 70 locations, very heavily headquartered in the UK and in Sweden still. And down in Australia here, we're across 4 offices and then cover New Zealand as well.
Wow. How long have both of you been with the company?
So I've been at IFS for 3 years.
And I've been 7 years, so I'm coming up to 7 years at the moment.
Okay. So the mining focus. We're here at iMark. Obviously, that's what we're doing here. For IFS, what are they bringing to the mining space?
I think Warren spoke about the company, but what do we do? Let me start with what we do first of all. So we help organizations that are asset rich, that have got many things. Like mining is a classic example of an asset-rich organization. Mm-hmm. They've got vehicles, they've got conveyor belts, they've got machinery, they've got equipment. So fundamentally, what IFS does is we help organizations to ensure that their assets remain working. Because if all of the bits and pieces of equipment are working in a mine, that mine is producing. If one piece of equipment or machinery goes down, it stops producing. Right, so the revenue stops, partners are unhappy, customers are unhappy, etc. So fundamentally, that's what we do. We ensure an organization's assets remains working. How do we do that? I often use the analogy of a car, right? Because a car is an asset. It's a private asset that we own. If we service and maintain a car regularly, A, it's going to last longer. Right. B, it's going to be more economical. It's going to run more smoothly, and the same goes for equipment out in the field in terms of mining. And I think the other element to this is that mines are they're in the Arctic Circle in Australia. They're out in the desert. Mm-hmm. They're really in extreme places where this equipment needs to work.
Right.
Just to maybe add on what Vijay's just taken you through, if you look at mining over the last couple of years, you've had mining 3.0, which was really the automation of mines, very simple automation. And then you had mining 4.0, which brought digitization to mines. And we're now into 5.0, which is talking around sustainability and around human-machine interaction. How's that going to look? I think what IFS is starting to do is we're starting to look at a mine and not look at individual components of a mine. So we're taking where we are. Some mines have digitized, some mines are still automating. Others are really progressing ahead. And what IFS is doing is helping bring that mining 4.0 and mining 5.0 to reality. By doing that, we're starting to look at the asset lifecycle of a mine. We're not looking at just the maintenance of a mine. So we're starting to say, how do we understand how we plan for a mine? How do we build a mine? How do we maintain that mine? How do we measure the performance of that mine, measure the performance of its assets? Because Vijay hit the nail on the head. If assets go down, mines go down. And when mines go down, you're not producing, you're not moving pit to port, and that costs money, all right? And I think what we're also starting to do is trying to understand how that works in the world of this new sustainability era. We need to reduce carbon footprint no matter what we do globally, and everybody's got to play their part. And what IFS is bringing to this party is the ability to measure your carbon footprint, the ability to try and understand what your ESG scores are real time as you move through the value chain inside a mine. So we started to take an holistic approach to mining, not just a fractional compartmentalized approach to mining.
Let's talk about our Heavy Industry World Tour brought to you by Sabina Equipment. Find, market, and sell surplus and used equipment. We are heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's Heavy Industry World Tour. Haul roads at all mine sites present a dual challenge: the need to suppress dust generated by heavy truck traffic and the concurrent need to maintain sufficient traction so that those trucks can operate safely. Australian Diversified Engineering, ADE, provides the solution with locally designed and manufactured metered water delivery systems built for performance, reliability, and safety. This approach enables mine operators to apply the right amount of water in the right location at the right time, thereby reducing dust generation and maintaining safe traction for heavy vehicles. From the precision of ADE spray to the power of ADE cannon and the durability of ADE nozzle, each system is engineered to make mine sites safer, smarter, and more efficient. Innovation built for the toughest environments. That's ADE. Visit ade.net.au to learn more. As mineral deposits become scarcer and more complex, the mining industry is facing its biggest challenge yet. We can't just dig deeper, we have to dig smarter. We need better recovery, superior efficiency, and greener sustainability. That's where Glencore Technology delivers. With a proven history of game-changing solutions such as isomil fine grinding and Jameson self-flotation, their engineering continues to set new global standards in recovery and process efficiency. Power the future of mining. Visit glencoretechnology.com today.
I quite often have asked in these sort of technical discussions, I've asked this question at the end, and I want to put it at the front because the technology you're using, the data you're collecting, the way you're distributing it, it is incredible. We've looked at different approaches, and it never ceases to amaze me what's in the market. But something that I really try to understand, and that is sort of a difficult thing to explain, but I think it's important, is somebody has that goal, everything you just talked about. And they've got their assets, everything you just talked about. Now they want to meet next week and start digging into it. What does that look like? Because, and I'll give you an example, just in our little company, we want to onboard like a sales program. Seemed easy until until we started opening up. And we're a fairly organized company, and it was still a challenge for us. What does this look like in the real world when a company says, we want to get going on something? What happens? Do you bring in a team of 10 people? Is it 2 people? Okay. Do they need to bring in, does the CEO need to be sitting there? Is their CTO sitting there? What does that look like?
Step 1 is discovery. We want to know what the pain is of the organization. You know, what is it? Is there equipment going down all of the time? Do the engineers have access to the right parts and the right tools? Do they have the correct certifications?
So this is very real world stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's what we want to do first of all. Is Mr. Customer, what is your pain? And typically we want to speak to the owners of the pain and get various different insights. And we do get insights from C-level, because at the top it's, well, you know, we're losing money and our customers are unhappy, we're losing contracts because our equipment keeps going down, and therefore the mine stops producing and there's a delay in orders. Right, so from a C level or a COO, they're losing money, right? And then we go a level down, right, to the actual maybe the operations person that owns that part of the challenge, and we want to find out, right, you know, what is it? What kind of element? Tell us, you know, in an ideal world, you know, how could this be fixed? Where are the pieces that are going down? And then we look at those pieces that are going down, and then, you know, we match those with our technology. Well, you know, we can help you there. Because, I mean, also, if you've got the history of a certain piece of equipment and you know that this certain piece of equipment, the fuse keeps blowing, right? And if that's registered somewhere, that the fuse keeps blowing on this piece of equipment, you could start to kind of diagnose, right, why? Why are we just changing the fuse every 3 weeks? Why don't we actually find out why that fuse is blowing? You know, but you need data. Coming back to what Warren said, and this piece of equipment, there could be 10,000 of these pieces of equipment in multiple mines across Australia. But it's about having the intelligence to know, well, actually, you know what? We've got a similar problem in a mine in Western Australia, and this is the reason it goes down. And then you apply that to all of the other.
This is where the AI comes in, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the AI also comes in from a historical data perspective. What is the performance of a certain piece of equipment over the last 2 years? And then when you start putting sensors on equipment, maybe it could be a temperature sensor or a vibration sensor. And then because we've got the benefit of all of that historic data from the past, we know that actually if the temperature goes to 28 degrees, it's fine. If it goes to 29 or 30 degrees centigrade, it's fine. But then if it goes above 31, and then there's also a vibration, we know from history that that piece of equipment, it will go down in the next 24 hours. And then we can schedule an engineer to go and look at that machine. But we have to schedule the correct, this is another part of our capability, is scheduling engineers. But it has to be the right engineer. Like me and Warren couldn't go and fix a piece of equipment.
Right.
We're not certified, we're not trained on it. And it could result in injury if you're not trained and certified in a piece of equipment, or even death, right? Which is not good for the kind of the ESG element of an organization's KPI. So our technology, by using the data that the machines spit out, whether it's through IoT sensors, we ensure the right engineer with the right part and the right skill set, the right tools, turns up in the right place at the right time.
And how has this changed over the next, I don't want you to call out competitors or anything like that, but in comparison to what's in the industry now, but also what has been the approach in the past. You said IFS has been 83?
93, absolutely. So look, why don't I take that one? So I think, there's been an evolution in mining technology and digitization, and now bringing in, as I say, mining 5.0 over the last couple of years. And I think, in the past, mining and its processes were highly fragmented. So parts of the value chain were highly siloed. They weren't interconnected. Data wasn't flowing. And Vijay has absolutely hit the money on the head. When you start to take an holistic approach and you start to look at asset lifecycle and service lifecycle,
including multi-site,
absolutely, of assets. All right, this is where the power of IFS really comes to the forefront, because you have a completely integrated, unified platform where you've got real-time data across your value chain. So from the point where you start planning for an asset, with the point where you start building that asset, maintaining it, you've got that data. But I think if we bring it down to an operational level, you touched on something a little bit earlier. You said, who comes to the party in the discovery phase? And Vijay said we touch on the we touch on the C-suite, we touch on the engineers. But I think that's one of the things IFS really brings against some of its competitors. We don't just bring the technology, we bring a very deep-rooted set of expertise built up over the 40-odd years, all right? So we only play in certain verticals. We do not play outside of those verticals. So a lot of our competitors were born in the world of finance. We were born in the world of industrial assets. And what that means is when we run these discovery sessions, not only do we sit there and just gather information, but we actually offer up information as well. Because we've worked for so many years only focusing on these verticals, with mining and resources and minerals being one of those core verticals, all right? We were one of the first companies globally to develop, for example, replication software for oil rigs, all right, to be able to replicate databases out at sea, etc., and so forth. So, IFS has always been at the cutting edge of technology when it comes to the industries it plays in, and it's only stuck to those industries. So I think that's one of the core things that we bring when we run these discovery sessions. I think the second thing that really has changed over time is the connecting of data points across the mining process. When you talk pit to port, when you talk order to cash, all right, I think in the old days a lot of that was siloed, and a lot of mines were using the concept of best of breed systems. And the challenge with that is that you then very often bring a lot of integrations to the party, and those integrations need to be maintained, and you need to see, do they work with the next versions of the upgrades. Where IFS differentiates itself is it's created a unified AI empowered platform which effectively is evergreen from day one. What I mean by evergreen is that you don't have to continually upgrade versions. So when I bring it back to mining operations, mines want to focus on their operations. They don't want to have to worry about upgrading their software every 3 to 4 years, worrying do the integrations work. With IFS, you have a complete end-to-end platform which can cater for the full asset lifecycle, as I've said, which is evergreen from day one. And I think that's something that's really changed in the industry. And other players will catch up. But I think at the moment, we've been groundbreaking in delivering that to the market.
Orica Digital Solutions Access Mining Technology delivers a full suite of instrumentation, data, and drilling solutions designed to empower the mining and exploration industries. From precision downhole surveying to real-time data management, their integrated ecosystem is built to streamline workflows, enhance safety, and boost productivity. Whether you're drilling deeper, surveying smarter, or managing data across multiple rigs, they deliver the tools and support to keep your operations moving forward, safely, efficiently, and with confidence. To learn more about Access Mining Technology and how it can support your operations, visit accessminetech.com. Traditional energy systems are becoming costly and increasingly carbon heavy, putting pressure on mining, infrastructure, and manufacturing sectors worldwide. AMP Control helps to tackle one of industry's biggest challenges: how to decarbonize while maintaining performance and reliability. They provide world-first energy innovations, electrifying mining fleets, advanced charging solutions, and electrical infrastructure solutions supported by 24/7 on-site service and support. By combining smart engineering with industry collaboration, they design custom energy solutions for their customers that enable site electrification. Visit ampcontrolgroup.com to learn more. For generations, the Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy and Petroleum has been the trusted authority connecting mine operators and solution providers. They deliver industry standards, professional learning, and real-world insight. Join them at CIM Connect May 3rd to 6th in Vancouver to celebrate 100 years of the CIM Expo, where people, technology, and partnerships shape mining's next era. Visit cimconnect.ca to learn more.
What is going back over to you, Vijay, what is the challenge? Because I sometimes think there's a fine line between promoting what you're delivering to clients, but also when if someone's sitting here listening to this going, yeah, I remember where this challenge, and I don't know if I want to get into this again. Where are those challenges, and how do you, and we're going to get into some case studies and stuff, but where are some common areas you see clients run into challenges or that there's confusion? And then, of course, how do you address that and help them through those bottlenecks in their own adoption?
Yes. Great question. If you look at mines, now one of the stats of mines is most mines only operate at 70% efficiency, right?
Really?
It means 30% of the time they're down, but it's unplanned downtime. And that's the thing that really costs a mine. When a piece of equipment just randomly blows up and the mine stops working, you have to wake up an engineer. Maybe it's in the middle of the night. Maybe you have to fly in the engineer via helicopter because, mines aren't on the edge of cities. They're out, they're in the outback. They're in really remote places. So unplanned downtime is one of the key areas that mines have in terms of a cost element. And this is a cost that we help mines to save money on this by ensuring maximum uptime. How do we do that? I mean, you also asked the question earlier about how was it done before. But what would happen is, in a mine, a piece of equipment would break down first, and then an engineer would come.
Right.
And the point that time difference between the piece of equipment breaking down and the engineer coming, that could be 24 hours, right? But for 24 hours, that mine is down. It's not producing anything. And Warren mentioned Industry 4.0 and 5.0. This is all about things like predictive maintenance. So by putting IoT sensors on various different pieces of equipment, we can detect before that piece of equipment goes down that this piece of equipment, using historic data, using AI, we know that this piece of equipment is going to go down in the next 12 hours. Let's get an engineer there before it goes down. We know from history what needs to be done. A part needs to be changed, or a part needs to be cleaned, or a fuse needs to be changed. We know that from the history. Let's schedule an engineer as soon as possible. And this whole predictive maintenance side of things results in greater uptime, right? Which means less, more efficiency, more operational excellence. And that's what mines are striving for, right? But I think that the biggest challenge is unplanned downtime. That is the biggest cost in a mine.
So when they're adopting your strategies, though, and your technology, what should they prep for themselves, though? Like in terms of gathering data, making sure that all the right sensors are on the machines, like you talked about earlier. Different mines are at different stages of automation, of sensors, monitoring systems, different power sources.
True.
It's quite a layered thing.
We had an event yesterday, and I popped the question to the audience. I said, look, where is everybody in their mining journey? Have they automated their mines? Have they digitized their mines? And are they now working with machines on their mines, i.e., what's the AI journey look like? Have they built digital workers? Do they have agents carrying out single workflows, or do they have digital workers carrying out complete workflows end to end? And there was an array of answers that came out of the audience, which was quite expected, but also a confirmation that every mine is not where possibly they want to be. All right, I think I think what's key coming out of this, though, is that mines recognise they're under regulatory pressures, call it bucket 1. Mines recognise they're under margin pressures, call it bucket 2. Bucket 3, they're completely susceptible to commodity price movements, which, as we know, can fluctuate quite rapidly depending on global socio-economic events. And so I think when you put those all together, what mines recognise is that they have to become more sustainable, they have to become safer, and they have to become more efficient. Those are probably their 3 main goals at the moment. And what IFS is trying to do is trying to help them address each one of those. So I think, coming back to trying to understand how these mines are dealing with this at the moment, I think some of them are dealing with on a reactive basis. So the government may change a regulation from an ESG reporting, and then they go, oh crumbs, we need to do something. Others are proactively looking at this and saying, hold on, if we can see down the line, we need to become more proactive in this sort of, how do we actually build for the future? And some mines, especially some of the larger ones, are recognizing that they need to have an ongoing program of development along that journey. I think, one of the things you touched on a little bit earlier, you mentioned around the AI coming into mines, and Vijay, mentioned around the fact that when assets are down, we're losing money, and the idea is to keep these assets uptime and what could happen going forward. I think where IFS is really trying to work with the mining industry is we're taking AI and building it across the platform. So that's really important. We're actually threading it through our platform. We're not having it sit above the platform or outside the platform. That's the first thing we're doing. I think the second thing we're starting to do is we're starting to understand, well, what can be completely run by a digital worker. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about the person that takes the jackhammer down under the ground, for argument's sake. You may, for now, still need somebody to do that. But what we're looking at is there are several back office processes. So Vijay mentioned, for argument's sake, a component on a machine goes down. We now have the technology from an anomaly detection perspective to understand through vibration anomalies, through, whatever it might be, that, as Vijay said, that part's going to break in 12 hours' time. We already pre-order the part, etc., etc. Traditionally, that's been done by a human. Very often we automated a process, and that process then got carried out by machine and human. Now what we're looking to do is to say, well, could we have a digital worker, automate 8 or 9 of those processes?
Right.
So when the software picks up that component is probably coming under undue stress, unplanned stress, if that makes sense, and that something is going to fail in the next 12 hours, and we have the use cases that dictate what's going to fail. Something will pre-order that part, will pre-request an engineer, will ensure that engineer has the right tools, the right sort of experience level, as Vijay put it out there, and ultimately that is all now carried out by a digital worker inside the software. All right, so within a business and a mine, you could have literally a series of digital workers carrying out that. So that's where IFS is really trying to grow that collaboration and relationship with the mining fraternity to try and understand, how can we make mines more efficient? All right, how do we make them more sustainable, and how do we make them a safer place to mine?
There's something I was wondering too is in the medical field, they're talking about, this is probably coming within a year, whereas, you go to one specialist, then another specialist, and they finally, and probably all of us have had someone in the family who's gone through that horrible process. And you go and you're trying to find the answer. Finally, you find this doctor somewhere who knows another doctor, and you finally get the answer. And sometimes it's incredible, but sometimes it's gone so long that the problem has just become worse. So they're talking about in the AI world.
Yes.
You could feed that in, and it could be a doctor in Taiwan has figured this out, and boom, there's the answer.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It'll be an incredible breakthrough medically. I don't see any reason it wouldn't happen. But then there's the security and privacy. So I was curious about that. When you're talking, I'm thinking, well, yeah, if I'm pulling data, if I've got 3 queries that I'm operating, fine. But if you're handling 100 queries, there's data to be taken from them. There's equipment operating in certain environments there. How do you manage that security, but also that data, that AI data that's coming from the platform itself, which is IFS?
AI, very interesting subject, right? First of all, a lot of organizations will operate within their firewall. Right, so that data, it will be, for instance, a piece of equipment may have a 500-page PDF document that gets fed into an LLM, right? So, for instance, if a piece of equipment is showing up a code 203, right? Back in the day, you'd have a printed manual and you'd find 203, you'd find out, right, this is what that error means, this was the solution, and that will take time, right? First, you've got to find the manual as well. Now, all of that data from that 500-page manual is uploaded into an LLM. An engineer could basically, within audio, can say, right, I've got an error code of 501 in natural language. What does that mean? And within a split second, he or she will get, right, this is what that error code means.
It's incredible.
It means this, and and this is the rectification. This is how you rectify this challenge. So within a few split seconds, or you can type it out or whatever. But to answer your question, we don't need to go outside an organization's firewall, because that information and that data, you don't need to go to the web for that, right? That is proprietary information that they need specific to a piece of equipment. Right, and that's how you would kind of contain information. Of course, when you start going out, that's where the doors occur, and as well as going out, someone could come in and hack.
Right, yeah.
Right, so you got to be careful. And also, I think the other angle is, back in the day before sensors, a firewall's pretty simple. You've got a few servers, you've got a few clients, and there's a firewall that protects. But now that kind of surface area has increased because you've got sensors out in the field everywhere.
And it's only getting bigger.
Absolutely. So, that the attack area has rapidly increased.
Right.
And every single sensor is an entry point back into an organization's central IT system.
Right.
So there's a couple of mechanisms you can use. Of course, the sensors, the devices need to be protected. The encryption between the sensor and the applications, that transport needs to be protected. It can be encrypted or what have you. So there's a number of ways that you can protect. But going back to the AI piece, a big challenge a lot of organizations have with AI is, if their own AI system that they have internally doesn't answer the question, it's so easy to go to their private chat GPT that they pay for and ask the question there.
Right.
Or create a report there. But that report could contain confidential information that shouldn't be out in the public space. So there has to be governance. There has to be policies set up within an organization. And this is all coming. A lot of organizations have an AI policy, for instance. Right? Do not create reports in external third-party AI applications. Ensure it's within our firewall. It's our internal AI, ChatGPT or Copilot, whatever it may be. But there needs to be internal regulation, internal policy, internal guidance on how to use AI safely and efficiently.
This must be a question you're getting a lot. The one I just asked, right?
Every day.
Yeah, every day.
Every day. Every day.
This is not just, I'm not the first up with this one, I'm sure.
And as Warren mentioned, our AI is native within our platform now. We've actually been doing, so IFS has actually been doing AI for over 17 years. So part of the...
I thought AI just came out a year ago.
Well, here's the thing. It wasn't called AI back then, right? We call it intelligence. We have got an algorithm.
And machine learning. And
all of this. But it accidentally, we've been doing AI for like 16, 17 years.
Yeah.
So we are experts in this field. And that's why very quickly we've embedded AI across our platform. So all the data that goes into our platform, be it equipment data, people data, parts data, where did the parts come from, supplier data, all of this information goes into our large language model and can be queried upon to get instantaneous results. In a similar way that I gave you the example of a user manual of a piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Rather than spending minutes, hours trying to find that information out, you just ask a question, and within a second, you get the answer.
It's just so amazing. I've said it before on the show. I still remember the first time we used a shared Google Doc.
Oh,
in my business card.
Yes.
But it was this incredible thing, because back in the day, you'd make the doc, save the PDF, send it off, someone would make notes. There was a process to getting something edited.
That's right.
And then we were sitting at a restaurant making notes back and forth to each other.
Yes.
And like now AI taking, and this data, taking all this information and then just to be able to redistribute it out. It's unbelievable.
It's crazy. I've got a story about AI actually. So so I covered Japan as well, right?
Oh, okay.
Can't speak a word of Japanese. But now with AI, I can upload a video of myself talking about IFS, ask it to translate in Japanese. It lip syncs, it uses my voice and translates into Japanese. And I actually sent to my colleagues, said, look, I've learnt Japanese. And a lot of them believed me because it was my voice.
Crazy.
The lips were moving precisely. And that translation, it took, I think, about 3 minutes. I uploaded the video. 3 months later, it created the video to download back.
Yeah.
But again, going back, just to edit a video or put subtitles in would take days, sometimes weeks, right?
Oh,
this was done in minutes.
Yeah.
And I think, just building on that, if you bring that back to mining at the moment, if the platform has the AI native and is embedded across the platform, it means that you have both the generative capabilities and agentic capabilities across your entire value chain inside a mine. All right. So, what Vijay was talking about is the ability to reference things, find things. You could tell something to go and find something in a period of time you think it was, and it will come back to you with options.
Right.
So I think, where this becomes very powerful for mining is when you've got to make decisions. Okay.
Right.
I think that's quite critical. When you've got plant and machinery, for argument's sake, that is down, and let's say it's come up as unplanned maintenance, but you've prepared for it. You've got data to make decisions on how do you navigate past that now. Let's say there's something that's quite serious with the plant machinery that's gone down, and it might, there's been a problem in the supply chain with regards to something coming through procurement, for argument's sake, to repair that, whatever it might be. But mines are certainly able to make decisions because they can certainly project forward on outputs, on deliveries, etc., etc. You could almost go into scenario planning with the current assets you do have that operational, and try and work through that. And using AI to help you plan with that will give you the most efficient, optimal outcome of something, as opposed to somebody sitting there thinking, well, hold on, I've got these assets on this site, this on this site, could I move these trucks here, use that? The software is able to actually generate scenarios for you. And I think that's where the power of AI is starting to come into that resources sector.
Well, we're really, in a way, we're talking, in a word, the resilience is what comes to my mind, is how do you make these mines that are under so much pressure from different, there's a demand, they've got to output product, then there's governance, the actual regulations they're having to follow, then there's the social pressure. We've talked about I got a question, I was actually a guest on that show, and they asked me what's the difference, because we have a construction show and a mining show, what's the difference between construction and mining? I said, people don't protest construction, and it disrupts their day-to-day life. There's a building going up right in front of you, and you're having to stop every day, and nobody complains because we understand it because it's there, we see it.
Yeah.
True.
And when you see it, you understand something, you're more comfortable with it. That's just human nature. Mines, it's this remote area, and so if you hear a bad story, that's a terrible story that happens somewhere that in something you don't understand. And I do wonder how, with just making better decisions, that trickles out to socially as well, I think.
Yes. No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And you touched on a word there, resilience. And I think that's what IFS does bring to the mining industry is resilience. I think you become resilient over time when you can address things real time and not let them fester. Bad news does not age well with time. We all know that, all right? And I think what IFS does do is it brings information and decision making back to the forefront in real time. And that allows you to keep the community abreast with things. It allows you to keep your assets intact. It allows you to keep your workers intact. And it allows you to keep your customers intact. All right. So you're creating the shell of resilience, as opposed to just this fractional, how do we address that? How do we address that? And that can only happen when you have free flow of data across all your
Right.
processes.
Yeah.
That's the only thing, you know.
I want to get into we got to get into a couple like real world scenarios. 'Cause we're talking a lot about it just sort of as a product or as a service. But could you have a couple of examples that we can get into of IFS comes in there, there's a project, this is what you delivered. I don't know who wants to take the first one. I'll let you choose.
Why don't I take the first one?
Okay.
So one of our customers is a African mine, gold mine, Resolute Mining. All right, Resolute's got 3 sites. They were the first. They were the first mine to have a completely autonomous, automated underground site. All right, completely underground, automated, and operated. And then they had 2 other sites in Africa. The challenge they were having is they had a complete disparate platform of systems across all 3 sites, all right, which means they were using different systems for finance, for argument's sake, different systems for sort of maintenance. And the challenge this was causing is that they were losing money hand over fist. They suddenly realized they didn't have real-time data. They realized that not all the data was accurate. It wasn't being delivered in the same format. So they found so much inefficiency in just trying to collate data, let alone make decisions from data. And I think IFS was called in there to say, look, how do we actually change this? What do we do? How do we connect these mines together? How do we make them digitized on a single platform? And again, they wanted to understand what the world of Evergreen looked like, because they don't want to undergo these upgrades every couple of years. And so what IFS has done is they've actually connected their finance, their operations, their procurement, their HR, their asset maintenance, all under a single platform at the moment, all right? And I think, obviously being a gold mine, ESG is becoming more and more important to them, and so trying to understand, how they can report from an ESG's perspective was also one of those key things. So IFS Cloud is one of the solutions that originally was the original version, the earlier version that we implemented there with them. And I think what it did do is it connected all 3 mines on a single platform, all with real-time data flowing between them, which meant not just the engineers could make real-time decisions, but so could C-suite. Okay, C-suite had a very good idea of what was being produced in which mine, how it was being distributed, where it was being moved, where the minerals were actually at, where did they get to port. That kind of data allows you to make decisions that impact shareholders, they impact your customers, and they impact your people that work for you, all right, positively. Prior to that, it was really working almost as 3 independent mines, although they were one mine. And this very often happens in the mining industry. You'll have a mine, you might have 2 or 3 sites, and then you buy a 4th mine and a 5th mine.
Right.
And I think IFS as a product is built on composable architecture and layered architecture. And I think that's quite important because it allows you much faster time to deployment, much faster time to value. And I think it reduces the risk of deployment when you move into other sites. So it allows you to operate literally your mines, and you can replicate those based on your sites in various areas. And this is what we brought to the forefront with Resolute.
And Warren, I just want to add to that actually. A lot of these mines are in different countries as well. So different countries means different currency, it means different regulation. So we cater all of this into the platform.
So what is that process? Like that mine, which mine was that again? That was the one in Africa? Resolute. So what would that, is that a 6-month project? Is it a year? What does it look like getting, you have multiple mines, multiple segments within those mines? You said they're almost operating like the finance and the engineering. And
let me finish with that one for a start, and you pick up the technical side. Dealing with the business side, I think it was quite interesting because some of those sites we were at were French speaking. So we needed French-speaking consultants to actually deliver that particular solution. So coming back to it, that sort of implementation can be anything from 8 to 14 months in a normal world, all right? And again, it's on different sites. And, customers have to decide, do they want to go big bang or do they want to go in a stage sort of process? I think that's very important.
So different customers do approach it differently?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it depends on the level of change management you believe your company is going to require and also how you're going to address that change management, all right? So that's quite important. To do that, IFS actually work with a series of global GSIs around the world. We work with the big GSIs, the Accentures of the world, the PwCs, the TCSs, the Infosys. And that's just
all types of integration happening.
Absolutely there is. But I think what's important though is that we've got a very strong ecosystem of partners globally that have those French-speaking or English-speaking or Dutch-speaking, depending on wherever the project takes us. Right. And I think that's quite a unique part of IFS is that we've built this ecosystem to help us deliver these solutions across the globe.
So these are like PwCs. This is a partner.
Accenture is a partner. Deloitte is a partner. TCS, so Tata Consulting, Infosys, for argument's sake. These are all partners of ours that have got their own teams of IFS people enabled. Bringing it back to the mining, though, this particular one, we worked with a partner for some of the French-speaking countries, and then IFS did some of the delivery themselves. So I think that's one of the other unique things. It can either be the OEM, i.e. IFS, that delivers some of those products and services implementation, or it can be a partner, and we work together to deliver those.
So does IFS have a platform that this is built around? Like I saw Nexus, I think it was called Nexus Black. I saw a note for.
Yeah.
Is that like the frame? What is that in terms of a project like this?
Okay, so yes, we do have a platform, and the way I simply define our platform is if you imagine a piece of Lego with a load of bricks in there. Each brick is a module of capability. Okay. One of the capabilities could be the register or the directory of all the assets that we have. Another brick could be what are the constituent parts that are required and when do they need to be changed, right? Another could be the supply chain aspect of this. Another could be the people scheduling capability of this. So we've got a load of different capabilities to ensure that these assets remain up.
Are you going to a mine then and saying, okay, what modules do you have already? Like, because they would have some sort of data already about their assets.
Great question. You're right, because mines aren't greenfield, right? They may already have an ERP system in place. Not a problem, because our platform is very open for integration. Again, it's modular. It doesn't just fit in with our Lego bricks. It can fit in with other IT software. So
because a project like this, I would imagine they would, if you've got a French-speaking, and they would have different programs running different. Yeah, right.
So the platform, it's modular, but we can integrate into other platforms, other software vendors. You mentioned Nexus Black. Nexus Black is another piece of capability that we have based around artificial intelligence. Right, so Nexus Black, and again, let me go back to how we approach customers again. So Nexus Black is aimed at some of our key high-level customers, and this is a C-level engagement. We go in at C-level to discuss AI. Everybody's talking about AI at the moment, aren't they? Everyone wants to. It's top of the list of many organisations' agendas. So our team goes in and discusses. Right. Share with us some of the business processes that are falling down, and we want to help you by delivering you a solution within weeks, not months, but weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say 14.
Identify.
You said 14.
Anything from 8 to 14, depending on the complexity.
It's not that long, actually.
No. Sometimes it can take longer. I mean, you could have an implementation that could easily go into 2 years. It depends on the complexity, how many sites they've got, for argument's sake. You know, if you're doing a mine with 6-7 sites in different countries, you're never going to do it all big bang just straight away. I mean, that's just crazy. You will bring in your base, your core, get it delivered, get the system set up, get your chart of accounts set up properly, get it running, and then you will start to replicate that in other countries.
Yeah, and then you're saying you're finding these gaps that they've got.
We find the gaps, and we use our technology to address.
Yeah, but with integrating you can integrate what they already have in place.
Absolutely,
You're not
that's
having
key. That's absolutely
key,
fundamental. Because we're not saying, well, you've already got an ERP system. Well, you have to throw that out and use ours. No, not at all.
Right.
We leverage your investment by integrating.
That must be a big relief to some people, because they're thinking,
data.
oh, okay, do we have to? Because you've seen these systems where it's like a whole. It's like we can't. We don't have.
And I think that's one of the key things about IFS. So when we talk an end-to-end enterprise platform, IFS within that platform, because of its modular, composable structure, all right, you could have the ERP component turned on. You could have the asset maintenance component turned on. You could have the ITSM, ITOM component. You could turn the service management. I think what is key, though, is when you work with IFS, you get the platform. And I think as your business evolves and requirements change and the requirements become real right now, we can actually allow you access or turn on those parts of that. So I think that's one of the, and again, I'll come back to it. It is an evergreen platform, which means you then don't have to do these upgrades. That is quite important.
And let me just interrupt you there. I think the other important thing about this is that we future-proof, right? A customer can start small with one module and gradually build up the modules. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add that piece there.
Right.
And customers love that.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's keep going through. Like, let's. I'm sure you have a couple more case studies, so I want to touch on them. Is there another one to you that stands out? You go, this really sort of exemplifies change management and adoption.
Yeah. I think the other thing about mines is that if you look at the assets, they're very diverse. right? And the example I want to give you actually is from a company called Holman AB, right? They're a Swedish company, and they produce wood products, paper products, but they've got the whole, if you like, supply chain because they own forests and woodlands, right? So you can imagine the type of equipment there. They've got mills to produce paper or cut wood. But these guys also, they've got their own energy sources. So they're actually their own utility provider. They've got their own sustainable energy production. So things like wind
Are they publicly
turbines.
traded?
But it's great. It's the whole kind of
Wow.
So it's very diverse, isn't it? They're not a utility. That there's the forestry piece. There's the paper piece. So the production piece, the wood cutting and production piece. So it's a very diverse business with very diverse assets. But we can look after all those asset classes. And again, what they wanted was maximum uptime to ensure that product keeps on getting made.
Because they've got this
right?
thing where this shuts down over here and this is affecting this. Or
Yes, imagine if they can't cut the wood, right?
Well, you invested in
Someone-
all this energy sourcing and now you don't need that
Absolutely.
energy, so it's sitting there. I mean, there's all sorts of
Absolutely.
things that would go into that.
So
yeah.
they wanted a system that could kind of, unify all these different types of assets to
Right.
ensure that they remain working, they remain up, so they can carry on producing product. And that's one of the reasons they came to us. And again, mines come to us rather than our competition because we are experts in the full asset life cycle.
Right.
From what asset do we buy? Do we buy a piece of equipment? Do we lease a piece of equipment, or do we refurbish the existing old equipment that we have? What is the most cost-effective way to do that, right? So we've got data to help an organisation make that decision. But it's not just cost, actually. There's the environmental aspect of this.
Right.
If we do refurb our existing equipment, the carbon footprint is quite high. But if we buy a new piece of equipment that's powered by solar, right, the footprint is lower. But the cost is higher. But so you've got an organisation that has to balance cost with environmental, with carbon footprint, with ESG. So we help organisations make that decision at the early stages of actually acquisition of an asset, and then the operation of the asset, even going to the retirement of the asset. So fully supporting the kind of the circular economy. But bottom line is, our capabilities help an organisation, not just the value of keeping assets up, but extending the lifespan of an asset, of a piece of equipment.
Yeah, so if a project like Holman, what would the end result be? Like those metrics they're looking at to go,
Yes.
this was a successful adoption.
Well, I think the key one is greater uptime. That's the key one. So greater uptime, less unplanned downtime, and
Right.
that's the big
Through the whole supply chain.
absolutely through the whole supply chain, from cutting down a tree to supplying A4 pieces of paper to you and me for our printers in our offices.
Right.
So
Yeah, well, and I guess the thing is, they know, okay, if this is going to be downtime, okay, well, let's use this opportunity to upgrade this utility system that we've been wanting to anyway.
as long as it's planned,
as long as it's planned,
yeah,
exactly,
if it's
yeah,
planned,
yeah,
then you can do that. Absolutely.
right.
And
So you're not doubling up your downtime, essentially. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
We have time. We have time for one more example. Any standout in the mining sector?
I can give you another one. We've got a mine that we deal with overseas called LKAB, iron ore mine. The challenge they had is they have some 700,000 assets across 20 different sites, all right, that they needed.
7,000.
700,000 across 20 sites. That's a lot of assets. I mean,
Some of these sites are in the Arctic Circle as well.
Correct.
So we're talking very extreme
yeah.
temperatures, right?
It was incredible, and the problem statement there was, how do we maintain this? And if you come back to what Vijay was saying a little earlier, we talk about asset uptime. Now go one step further, and you can talk about reduction of carbon footprint. Do we, decommission assets, rebuild them, recomponent, refit them, etc. So I think the problem stated there initially was an asset maintenance solution. How do we maintain these things? How do we maintain them under a single umbrella? So IFS has come along and provide them with IFS an EAM solution to maintain those assets. But I think what they've realized out of that is they've realized operational efficiency, because now, as Vijay said, if you know something's going to be damaged long before it becomes damaged, it might be a cheap, simple part that you replace now that gives you an extra 10,000 cycles of that asset.
Like a cable?
Like a cable.
Sorry.
I'm sure we'll edit that.
We're not editing it. We make mistakes too.
But absolutely, classic example. So I think, classic example is, let's take a drive shaft in a machine. It's supported by bushes. When the software detects vibrations that are outside, which are an anomaly, outside of what the right sigma of a vibration should be, replacing those bushes is a lot cheaper and a lot easier and a lot simpler with much less downtime than replacing the whole prop shaft, for argument's sake, as an example, inside a machine. And I think, what LKAB we're looking to do is to try and bring all assets onto a single platform to understand how they maintain those assets in such a way that ensures they can extend that life of the asset, ensures they can reduce.
But they want it holistically. They want it holistically
and you have
that
to.
Is crazy.
You have to. It's super important when you're running an operation with 700,000 assets. You can't not know where your assets are.
I can't even picture that. It's a lot of assets.
I can share a completely different example from a different industry, the airline industry. When September 11th happened, there were a lot of airlines that were mothballed overnight, but there were a lot of finance institutions that had financed these airlines under lease agreements or whatever. They were supposed to keep asset registers of what these assets were, as an example. So many financial institutions, this is completely outside of the world of mining, but it's a real life example, discovered they had leased or provided financing for assets, aircraft, but the engines weren't matching to what they had originally financed. Some engines were on different aircrafts that they found. I mean, it was incredible. If I bring that back to mining, it's the same thing.
I was actually going to ask about that, these adapting of the assets.
So when you bring this back to mining, if assets go down, as Vijay said earlier, you either have downtime, you could have a fertility on a mine. So it's super important that you understand exactly what that asset's doing, when it's doing, how it's doing. So I think by bringing this together, the LKAB improved operational efficiency because they could extend the life of the assets. They could improve the performance of those assets. I think what they also did is they understood which assets needed to be replaced on an ongoing basis, so which were coming to end of life sooner. Prior to that, it was all over the park. They had no control over the assets, no control over the management of the assets, and over the performance of those assets.
You basically just had people in their silos going, try to do a good job with this limited quantity of assets.
Correct, absolutely. So what IFS has brought to that is structure. It's brought visibility of the assets, the performance of the assets. It's extended the life of the assets, all right? And these are all things that ultimately improve the employee experience. They improve the shareholder return, and they improve the outcome for the end customer as well. And I think that's what IFS is always about. We're about focusing on the assets. So we look at a company and we say we focus on your assets, your people, and your customers. And I think that's critical, and I think that's what we brought to LKAB. You might have to edit that.
I want to add one more thing, actually. Yes. The other driver is first-time fix rates.
Yes.
Right? So imagine this.
Sorry, which?
First-time fix rate, right? So fixing an asset in the first visit. Because what typically used to happen is that, imagine you've got a mine within the Arctic Circle, right? A piece of equipment goes down. An engineer flies in. And looks at the piece of equipment and thinks, right, this part needs changing. I don't have that part with me. Jumps back in the helicopter, flies back to the warehouse. Part's not in the warehouse. It's actually in one of the service trucks that the engineers take, but no one has registered that this part is not. The warehouse system says it's in the warehouse, but it's not, right?
And this happens. Like, this is not a thing that could happen.
Life.
This is
real life.
Absolutely. Yeah. As in pre-IFS, this happens, right? If an organisation isn't using a piece of capability. And then you have to find the part, then jump back in the helicopter, go back to the piece of equipment, and then realise you don't have the tool or the expertise to change it. Then you have to fly. Because we've got the information and data around the asset, as Warren said, we know from history, typically this is the behavior of an asset where we need to change part C, right, and replace part C.
Yeah.
So we know all the information around, right, we know the part, we know where that part is located. So before that engineer goes out, in the engineer's work order, it will say, right, need you to go to this location, pick up this part, you need to have this tool, right, in order to repair this piece of equipment that's gone down. So it's first time fix. So the engineer jumps in the helicopter, goes there, fixes a piece of equipment, comes back. That's it, done, right? So the first time fix rates have gone up big time. with
and you've seen multiple examples of that.
multiple across the
Completely,
board.
across many areas, the services industry, in the resources industry. I mean, I think that's a key thing. I want to pivot a little bit because it's quite important around some of the improvements that customers have seen in the mining sector and so forth. Vijay spoke about Nexus Black, the program, and how we help customers through this think tank AI program build use cases that can be used in our core product, which are very specific to that customer's business, their workflows. One of the other things we do at the moment is we actually can help customers through the platform build agents and string those agents together to create a digital worker. So some of the activities that Vijay just mentioned there traditionally may have been carried out by an engineer and people and so forth. Now what we're doing is we're starting to build a repository of digital workers based on certain industries. All right. So we've actually already got 10 fully functional digital workers that a company can insert into their business tomorrow that can carry out 8 different workflows in a day that might have been carried out by 2 or 3 different humans. Okay. But now they carried out with 0 downtime from the digital worker. The error sort of concurrency, etc., is reduced significantly, and I think that's what IFS is trying to move forward. So when I spoke about bringing mining 4.0 and mining 5.0 together, what IFS is trying to do is really move to that next level and help that machine-human interaction really advance the mining industry. I think that's really, really key coming out of what we do.
And a digital worker doesn't need a tea break, doesn't need to sleep. It runs 24/7 basically, right? Without any human interaction.
You know, there's something that it came to my mind. I don't know if this is a great example, but I'll take a swing at it. One thing that came to my mind through this interview was, you know, back in the day, there'd be a guy. I actually lived kind of near where there was the gold rush in Canada.
Right.
So people would go up there with their donkeys or whatever they would. They'd have a gold pan. I mean, it's these old pictures, and that's that area. You can actually drive up there, and there's different historic areas up there to check that out. Or if you take a small community, people think, well, on social media now it's all so connected. But what I think where people forget is, no, but there used to be 2 or 3 guys on a trail, and they would be talking, comparing notes. There wasn't so much data. There wasn't so much technology that they could share the information that needed to be shared easily. In a community, you had 20 families. So everybody kind of knew what each other was doing. They knew what was going on. Now you're flying. I took my family and flew halfway around the world. I don't even know if I told my mother I was gone. You know, so it's much harder to stay connected now. And I think people think, well, we're losing something. I think it's the opposite. I think it's gotten so big and it started to get fragmented. And now I think these types of systems, those digital workers are actually allowing that engineer to be connected with that other engineer that 20 years ago they would have been working side by side. That's not the world now. But now they can reconnect again and they can share that knowledge. That's sort of my look when I see AI. I actually think it's bringing a lot of people back together in a way that, because the brain is just bigger, and so it allows people to connect again.
And there's so much data, right?
It's impossible for humans to absorb it. It's impossible.
And the other element to this is also the aging workforce. This is a key challenge in many mines around the world, is the aging workforce. But the ability to pull out and extract information.
And aging out that knowledge.
And putting that into a system to help the next generation. You know, those nuggets of experience and you know, to get a job done in half the time that you know, these experienced miners that have been doing it for 30, 40 years have. You know,
or even how to communicate a problem, even how to say, okay, this is a historic thing. This is how I tell my manager.
Absolutely.
You know, in an efficient way.
And this is key. This is key to the huge challenge a lot of mines have of the aging workforce.
Or like you said, language barriers.
Language barriers. Yeah, I mean, LCAB operate over many countries, for instance. Right? The example that Warren gave, Resolute operate over many different countries. Just another thing, we've also got this other a piece of capability called POCA, the connected worker, where, let's say an engineer turns up and doesn't know how to unscrew a panel to access what's behind, right, to change a fuse or whatever it may be. Now, you know, like on YouTube, when you want to fix a camera or something, and you go to YouTube to find out what the different steps are, you follow, or you want to change the battery in your phone or your PC. So we've got that for our workers, for engineers. We call it the Connected Worker Platform, where an engineer turns up, in front of a piece of equipment and gets guidance through videos and, you know, what safety equipment to wear, what tools to use, and exactly that, step-by-step instructions in order to, in how to carry out a repair on a piece of equipment. So we also have this as well, and it's just another way to capture the data that you spoke about.
And is that an always expanding thing as you're...
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a knowledge base that constantly expands.
So these are like videos, or like how do you absorb the... Yeah.
It's videos, so and the videos can be translated into any language.
Wow.
So if the video's in Japanese, it can be translated into English or Spanish or French or what have you.
Last question to both of you, just for time's sake. Where do you think... this is just a fun. I'm not going to hold you to this. 5 years from now, how much different does the mine site look? Is this? Are we 10% of the way there, or are we 90% of the way there?
I'll start. Maybe you jump in.
God, yeah.
I attended an MIT conference the other day, and the guest speaker was a CTO for some government organizations, and then more recently for a very large software firm. And he stood up and he said, very often we overestimate the short-term impact of a new piece of tech, but we completely underestimate the long-term impact. He said, so let's go back to the world of predictive maintenance. Okay. He says, machine learning. 10 years ago, it was all anybody could talk about for 18 to 24 months. And he says, then what happened? Fell off a cliff. Nobody spoke about it. Okay. He says, but look 10 years down the line and look backwards on what it's meant for assets in business. Yeah. It's revolutionary.
Well, that's the saying, the Google Doc. A shared doc is a nothing
absolutely
thing. That used to take hours.
And you know, if we look at right now, I've had such customers that say, oh, just give me a break on AI. I've had others that like, tell me more, I want to absorb. Yeah. I think everybody's at a different stage of the AI journey, and I'm using AI specifically. Yeah. I think what IFS is doing very cleverly is we're embedding it in the platform, first and foremost, okay, both generative and agentic AI, and very soon it'll be stage 4 AI that'll be coming, okay. The second thing we're doing is we're building these call it incubator programs for AI technology that is very specific to customers, and Vijay touched on the Nexus Black. And the third thing we're doing is we've bought a platform that allows you to create digital workers through stringing agents together inside your workflows across your business. So to answer your question from my perspective, I think we're not even at the tip of the iceberg here. And I'm not trying to frighten people. I think what is key is not this is a groundswell that's taking place. I think what people should do is learn to optimize what this can do for them and not think this is going to replace them. Because I think what is key coming out of this journey in the mining sector, in the oil and gas sector, in any of those resources sort of sub-industries, is that sustainability is becoming a big thing. Operational efficiency is becoming a big thing, all right? I think, you know, managing the sort of geopolitical fluctuations across the globe that are much more volatile and potentially will be more volatile are going to become critical to commodity prices. And the only way you're going to do that is through technology. Yeah. And so to answer your question, I think 5 years from now, you'll see a lot more digital workers running a lot more workflows. You will find people that were running those workflows being elevated into other jobs using that AI to help them produce a better outcome. That's why I see us in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer.
Yeah. And I concur totally. I think, you know, if you look at transformation, so all mines are on a journey of digital transformation, right? Nobody's there yet. Nobody's at that end point. They're all at different phases of becoming digital. And I think as time goes on, mines will become more digitized. And I think you hit a really interesting thing there about geopolitics, because, you know, costs are going up. Raw material costs are going up. Transport costs are going up. So the protection of a cost base of a mine is key. It's critical. A mine has to operate as efficiently as possible. So we will see these gradual changes around the digital transformation journey using digital technology to help a mine keep costs down and keep operational efficiency to the maximum, basically.
And one thing, you know, at this event yesterday, I asked the question, I forget exactly what it was, but the answer came back to us, as long as the tonnage price doesn't drop by X per ton. And I thought to myself, and I didn't say it then, I thought to myself, there is a classic example of a mining CFO who's only focusing on one component of mining, the cost per ton. And right now, that's all they focus on. There are other CEOs of mines at the moment that are looking at this and saying, hold on, if I can better use the CapEx I have available from my market cap through planning the asset better, the investment, where do I invest? Do I invest in the smelter? Do I rebuild, recomponent, fit my smelter? Then looking at the maintenance of these assets, looking at the performance monitoring of the assets, because at a time, if you start to build digital twins of these assets, you can actually start to measure which assets perform against their twin based on the environment, based on the climate, based on whatever. And in some instances, you may outperform the twin. Okay, you only get to that optimal stage when you can measure against the twin.
Right.
And I think, you know, if mines are starting to look at how do we reuse assets and recycle them, okay, all under this banner of ESG, suddenly the answer to what I asked wouldn't just be provided the tonnage doesn't drop. The answer would be provided I can extrapolate more value out of our mine as a mine. That's where the real value lies, not just in one component, the price of a commodity, because you've got no control over that. That's market driven. What you do have control over is how efficient your mine can operate. And that's where people need to shift in the next couple of years, is to try and understand that full mining end-to-end process and how to maintain that asset life cycle.
Yeah, well, and I imagine we'll see things like, oh, the market's dropping over here, so we're going to move this team over here with this. These assets can maximize value there, right? They just move it around.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I really do appreciate. You're both on LinkedIn, I believe.
Yes.
So I'm going to put your link in if people want to connect.
Fantastic.
Thank you for doing it. It was great having IFS on. You literally are at the forefront of mining, what's happening in the industry. So thank you very much. I hope we get to do it again.
Lovely. Thanks for the time. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. Of course, make sure to go check out IFS LinkedIn, their website, connect with both our guests here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the support. And we will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.